Bob Woodward, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you.
What was going through your head yesterday as the result became clear?
Amazing. Isn't American democracy something? I wrote out something that was a note they found on Richard Nixon's bedside when he was president. And if I may read it, it's brief because it really resonated with me. Nixon, in this note, wrote, "A person is not finished when he or she is defeated. A person is defeated when he or she quits." I had that thought, and I say this to everyone, Australians included, and that is, don't quit or give up on American democracy. It has its ups and downs, it has its struggles, but I believe it's strong even now.
I'm slightly surprised to find you so optimistic given the words that you wrote about Donald Trump in your book. You described him as reckless, impulsive, governed by fear and rage, also calling on your previous books. How does all of that allow you to be optimistic about a second Trump term?
Because people grow, even old men. And he now has to realize, I've got to know him very well, I spent hours interviewing him. He has to know he has an opportunity to arise above himself and so many of his instincts and impulses. And if he does that, he could really do something. The office, I've written about 10 presidents going back to Nixon. The concentration of power in the presidency is almost immeasurable. And Trump might see that moment anyway. This is the optimistic person, born, raised in the Middle West of the United States. You're forced to be optimists, and maybe that will be the case. Maybe it won't be the case, but if it is, he may do something memorable. Now, there are lots of barriers, his past, his behavior, what you wrote, but I think it's possible. And he has to think it's possible. There is a point in my book, War. This is this summer after he's been shot, you remember, and he has that bandage over his ear. And he, to the crowd, gave the following speech. "The discord and division of our society must be healed," Trump said. "As Americans, we are bound together by a single fate and a shared destiny. We rise together or we fall apart. I am running to be president of all Americans, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning only half America." Now, he changed in that very speech and said some very dark things at the same time, but let's give him a chance.
And yet, just to stay on that point, he did return to the themes of vengeance and retribution. His language became dark again, and it mirrors more closely the warnings given to you by the very senior Americans who worked with him in his previous term. So apart from a state of optimism that you live in, why would you set aside the views of those very serious people who warned he had fascistic impulses?
Because, not only, he was a fascist to the core, according to General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the #1 American military man. Because, these are people who spent their lives defending America. So they really believe in the country. And if Trump makes a concerted effort, maybe he can reach out to some of them. Maybe not, and maybe my optimism or my hopefulness will be snuffed out by reality. That often happens. But those are the words that Trump said this summer. Some dark things, but also some light things.
Now, his resounding victory, because it was a resounding victory, tells us something else. It tells us that his Republican colleagues were wrong. People and his Republican colleagues were wrong to treat him as an aberration. Now, I think Lindsey Graham, in your book, told you something similar to that, didn't he?
Yes, a senator from South Carolina, a very good friend of Trump's. Yes, that's all out there also. But you come to a moment in your life, every individual, and Trump may come to this moment. He may not. I'm just. I've got to express that hope. Now, he has a lot of work to do. He has got to take those people who've criticized him with merit. One of the things I learned from working on for over 50 years, presidents have choices. They can go this way or they can go that way. Trump has that choice also.
I just want to come back to his essential character, though, because you have written about that in this book, but also in your previous books about him. People's characters tend not to shift profoundly, especially in the later years of their life. You said he governed by instinct. What was so wrong with that, and why could that be a problem?
Well, the problem with instinct, and I'm going back over old interviews, 35 years ago when Carl Bernstein, my Watergate reporting colleague, and I interviewed Trump, we asked him, and he just a question, and he just said instinct. Instinct, of course, that is the impulse and the feeling from inside that governs behavior. And I found an interview with him when he was president in the Oval Office. He talked about instinct. And so, what that delivers us, we are going to see. But he's got a lot to answer for. And is he going to know that, or is he going to think, now I'm president, I've got all the power, and lord it over people in a dangerous way? That's also possible. I think from doing books on these 10 presidents, they all change, they all grow, some of them falter, make serious mistakes, some govern wisely, actually. But in the course of each presidency, you see the person change. The office of president changes the person.
How did it change Donald Trump first time round?
Well, as he says, to give him credit on this, we had a pretty good economy and we had no war. That's a big deal for a country, for people who have to serve in the military. So no war, but he also made lots of mistakes, and his character was revealed in ways that really foreshadow a danger for the country. But I'm gonna fall. I gotta use my instincts and say this is a possibility.
Let me ask about Vladimir Putin. You report that you revealed, in fact, that Donald Trump had spoken to Putin numerous times after he left office. Why did he do that?
Well, he likes Putin. He says Putin likes him. Russia's a very important country, obviously, and there's no doubt that Trump is attracted to authoritarian, forceful leaders. Putin is one. But this is, I don't like to go down the speculation road, but I am, because there's something inside of me that just says, don't say everything is dark and impossible, because I just don't feel that. But there is something about what's going on in the world now, which is so dangerous. And I know so many people who serve in the national security fields who just tremble at the danger that there is, and I write in my book about the conclusion quickly that there's a 50% chance that Putin, leader of Russia, would use a tactical nuclear weapon. Should that happen, we go into a new realm. The silent shadow of nuclear weapons hangs over everything. You can't be president because the president has the authority to order the use of nuclear weapons. You can't be president and not realize the awesomeness of that responsibility. So, hopeful.
So how important is it then, if you consider what kind of relationship he has with Vladimir Putin or with the leader of North Korea, how important is it, the kinds of people that he brings into his immediate entourage this time?
Oh, you mean what his team is going to be?
Does it matter, or is it all about him?
Of course it matters. I mean, this is one of the problems with Trump. He doesn't have a natural group of aides and people who work for him, and nothing is ever done alone. As you know, you're doing this. You've got camera people and producers and organizers. Think of the presidency. You can't do it alone. He needs a team. There's not been a lot of evidence that he's had team. In my book, I show how Joe Biden as president, remember, right this day, Joe Biden's president of the United States. And he has a team in the CIA and the Pentagon, in the State Department, and in the White House that is very strong. They operate together. They make decisions. And as I point out in my book, at the end, the Biden team has kept America safe, kept the homeland safe. I think it's probably job one for a president, to keep the homeland safe.
You say you don't want to get into the business of predictions, and it's not our job as reporters to do that. But how do you think Vladimir Zelensky's feeling today?
What do you mean, with Trump's
Yes.
victory?
Yes.
Well, Trump has not been a fan of Zelensky, has not been a fan of supporting Ukraine. Of course, U.S. policy has been to support Ukraine. It's marvelous what we've done, billions of dollars in aid. I write in my book in some detail about the intelligence sharing and training that has gone on. Our CIA has helped Ukraine and Zelensky create an intelligence service that is quite professional and quite skillful.
What happens to all of that now?
Well, we're going to have to see. I mean, Trump is going to, and this, of course, is going to be his big task, listen to other people. And Ukraine is really important. And if we are going to enter a world where a country like Russia can attack and territorially acquire another country, just look at the map of Europe. It's very interesting. If Russia takes over Ukraine, then Ukraine has a 315-mile border with Poland. I talked with the president of Poland, Duda, who is worried to death that Ukraine will fall to to Russia, and he will have this 315-mile border. He reminds me, when I talk with him, that the last war, it came from the other side, Germany, and now it could come from Ukraine, come from Russia.
You know Donald Trump quite well. You spent a lot of time thinking about him.
And the last year of his presidency, I did 19 interviews with him for 9 hours.
So given that, when you think about the things that he says, he threatens NATO, he talks about bringing, we were just discussing, bringing Putin and Zelensky together to end the war in Ukraine. How much of that is Donald Trump bombast, and how much of it is a plan, is serious?
Well, you know, you can have a plan and it gets discarded or improved. Here's the question. Here's the question history can only answer, and that is, as President of the United States, will Donald Trump rise to the occasion? If he falls to the occasion and does some of the things that he has threatened to do, then we are in for one of the darkest periods of U.S. history and world history.
What do you do if you're Australia in a situation like that? We've become more and more enmeshed with US strategy in the Pacific. What do we do faced with a Donald Trump presidency? Would it be wise for Australia to pull back from its very deep relationship with America?
No, maybe more submarines. Really. I think again, we're going to have to see. I don't know. I mean, has Trump talked much about Australia?
No, not a great deal. No.
I don't find so. He will be confronted with that key. What a indicator of where this is going. Who will he pick as his national security advisor in the White House? Secretary of State, Defense Secretary, CIA Director, and so forth. That's going to be a real clue. Even Donald Trump is going to realize you can't do all those jobs alone. And he knew that when he was president the first time, and the performance is not what it should have been. What have the American people said to Donald Trump by electing him? They have said, we're going to trust you to do the right thing. There is evidence that it's possible, and there's evidence that it will be hard, if not impossible. And then on this will depend much of our future. I would love to pick up that history book in 20 years and see what the historians say about this time, but we don't know because it's not written. And it's not a really big intellectual push to take somebody who becomes president, who's been president, and say, now you've got these opportunities. Look at what you can do. I spent the last year of his presidency talking to him and trying to say, what's your plan for dealing with the coronavirus? And
did he ever listen when you were asking him those questions? Did he ever listen to the questions that you were posing?
Well, but it was what I'd call Trump listening, which is, yes, with my ear, but not head. Last interview I did with him on July 20th, 2020, because the coronavirus was totally enveloping the country. And I said, and I kept asking him, what's the plan? He would not, kept pushing it off. So on this day, Mr. President, 140,000 people have died of this virus. You were warned at the beginning of the year about this when there was one case in the United States, and you kept saying, don't worry, it's going to go away. Mr. President, it hasn't gone away. 140,000 people have died. What is your plan? Quote, he said, oh, it's going to go away, don't worry. Mr. President, when are you going to have a plan? What's your plan? He said, I'll have a plan in 106 days. And I was stunned. That was election day. He was thinking about elections, not the people. I mean, suppose you're sitting in your house and somebody says, you know, the house is on fire, let's call 911. Let's call the fire department directly. And you say, no, let's wait 106 days before sounding the alarm. Stunning, stunning. I mean, not only stunning, but negligent, a moral felony of the highest order.
And yet you're optimistic.
Have to be. I can't stamp it out. It's there. I hope I'm right about that. Certainly acknowledge that I could be wrong. Does he want to destroy this country? Let's hope not.
Just a question about where we're up to today, which is he has taken control, or Republicans have taken control of the Senate. They may yet get control of the House.
So of the legislative branch, Trump has his thumb on that also.
So what difference does that make to the way he conducts himself, that he may have the trifecta, he may have all three, but he already has the Senate behind him?
Well, it gives him all the running room in the world. I think as president, with the concentration of power in the modern presidency, he has immense running room and power and opportunity. I mean, hopefully there's somebody in his life, an aide, a friend, his wife, Melania. I mean, what does she think of all this? Does she sit down and, husband to wife, Donald, you have a real chance.
But do you have any indication that he listens to anyone? Have you ever learnt that from any of the interviews you've done?
Well, that's a really good question. He listens, but doesn't really act on it. He filters it out. Again, he's driven by instinct, and that's something personal. He's, this is my instinct. Instinctively, he told me 35 years ago, asked about something, instinct. I said, what is this face-off with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, who's very, very dangerous? What are you going to do about it? And he was saying, well, and Kim Jong-un has quite a nuclear arsenal. If he shoots, he shoots. Are you saying that? We're sitting in the Oval Office to drive him to the bargaining table, and Trump actually said, no, it's instinct. Instinct is driving this.
Let me ask you a final question about Joe Biden, because there will obviously be deep recriminations within the Democratic Party about this loss. Should Joe Biden have run the second time? Should he have made clear that he would not run again?
No, look, that's politics and that's personal. But what Joe Biden did, and I show this in my book, he refused to send U.S. ground troops to Ukraine. That was a pivotal decision, because now we don't have ground troops involved in that war. And Joe Biden, 81, I happen to be 81. At 81, he realizes, what is the lesson tingling back in his head? It's called Vietnam. The lesson of Vietnam. We sent 500,000 U.S. troops to fight in a foreign war. He knew, don't do this, when he initially refused to send U.S. troops to fight in Ukraine. He was getting lots of pushback from his aides. He said, I'm not doing it, because he knew the peril of sending U.S. troops into foreign wars, and posthumously, or sometime, maybe even when he leaves the presidency, they should give him the Nobel Peace Prize for that.
Just actually one more final question. You coaxed or arranged a lot of people to talk to you about Donald Trump. They made severe criticisms of him. You make severe criticisms of him yourself. He's known to be a vengeful man. Should you or any of your sources be in fear?
Always worry, always protect. Again, I believe in our democracy. I don't feel in danger or threatened, and maybe events will prove me wrong, but remember, this is what is it? I tried to say it again. Don't give up on American democracy. I'm not.
It's a hell of a message on this day. Bob Woodward, thank you very much indeed.